I'm State Representative Kim Fawcett, and you're here today with me for an episode of Our Town. Our Town is a public access television show here in Fairfield, and it's just an opportunity for all of us to get to know our local leaders a little bit better. Today I have with me Assistant Fire Chief Chris Tracy. We just went through the different titles that are in town, but you are Assistant Fire Chief, and thank you so much for joining me.
Well, thank you for having me, Kim.
It's a pleasure. And first, I just mentioned to you, I wanted to just talk a little bit how you became a firefighter, because it's kind of an interesting story. I always thought you weren't always a firefighter. You had a different career.
I had a couple of careers. I had actually put myself through school playing guitar in the local clubs around State College. I went to the city thinking I'd be able to do that, and found a whole lot of other people doing that, and I wound up as an actor on All My Children and a few other
All
soaps.
My Children!
Yeah. Which just, I'm afraid, wrapped for the last time down in Stamford in its new version. But I honestly don't remember growing up knowing where the fire station was. I knew where the creamery was for the ice cream, but not where the firehouse was. In terms of how I got into the fire service, my landlord in Westport was a fire inspector at the time that I moved there, became fire chief, and had recommended that I ought to take the fire test. And I laughed. I said, I have a union theater company, equity theater company in Greenwich. I have a soap opera role.
I'm good.
On a national, I'm good. Thank you, though. And a few months later, he needed someone to cover for a maternity leave of a dispatcher, a civilian dispatcher. So I came in and picked it up, and I found everything that I'd been looking for in the theater. I found a family in the brotherhood of the fire service. I found a different event every day. It was always different, not a cubicle. And I found an ability to really change people's lives in a tangible way.
Right.
So I started taking tests, and ironically enough, the young lady whose son was born that I covered for that maternity leave, her son came to our fire school as a probationary firefighter in Bridgeport and just made lieutenant in Bridgeport Fire Department. That gives me a sense of how I stand in time. But I was a Boy Scout. That was about the extent of my understanding of the fire service.
I would be remiss if I didn't touch on just a little bit your All My Children days, because I was an All My Children watcher when I was in college.
It may precede that. It was Greg and Jenny, and I was auditioned for Tad. Didn't get the Tad role, but got filled in. My wife and I played a young doctor and nurse on it for a time. Changed some medications, got him in trouble, actually Angie Hubbard in trouble, and we wound up actually on what they call the back burner. Our storyline was not front for the time being, and then the producers changed. They brought in a whole new company of folks, in a sense, and I was looking for something to do. As much as the fire service appealed to me, it was also a wonderful opportunity at the right time.
Well, we could probably do an entire show just on your days on the set of All My Children, and maybe someday I'll do a drama series. But today we wanted to really talk about the Fire Training Center. And this is, I guess, is it your silo in the fire service? How did you end up sort of the chief of the Fire Training Center?
Well, there is a long series of folks before me. The site is named Captain Joseph Elias Fire Center or Fire Training School because the gentleman who was the fire department's first training officer, Captain Joseph S. Elias, lived right up on Dill and Wormwood up middle of town. He saw an opportunity when the Nike missile sites were being mothballed, were being essentially shut down by the government in the mid-'60s, and went to the chief of department, Chief Stopa, and the commissioners, and convinced them that we should acquire that land. So the pieces that were there at the time that were missile sites over on Old Dam Road, you can see those missile sites. They rose the missiles every week in training. And then our fire control area, which was the radar towers, which is off what is now Richard White Way, Old Dam Road, on the way to the dump and the sewage treatment plant and the Enviro Grow. So we know which way the winds are blowing. But we do have this facility that Captain Elias recognized as an opportunity. And so for literally almost half a century, the fire department has been able to train there. And because back then the fire service was much more open, it was not as restricted in a lot of the statutory and legal documents that it is now. There were mutual aid pacts that were formed, and so Westport would come, Bridgeport would come, and train at that facility.
And just to clarify, so for people, if anybody is sort of wondering where this fire training center is, it's on Reef Road, right down on the water, and it was, as we were talking about, it was originally this Nike missile site. Yeah. So it's right here in the heart of our town for many, many years. And so what kinds of training are occurring there? What's going on?
Well, our list of training, we are allowed by the state to provide statutory training, certification training for firefighter 1, firefighter 2, pump operator, and we do all of those things in-house. We also serve as a host site for the Connecticut Fire Academy to bring in the aerial operator, the fire officer 1, 2, 3, 4. We have a program right now with half a dozen of our officers taking it that's run by the state but hosted at our site. And it is a 60-year-old, 50-year-old site. It was built 60 years ago, so we have buildings that are about 3 generations past their lifespan. And so when we get to talk about what's coming, we're very excited about that because we are burgeoning. We're bursting at the seams. Along with the fire training we do flashover survival. So if an entire room catches fire and the gases are all on fire, the firefighters recognize the signs and get out. We have a simulator for that. We have a trench that our own members designed and built that's a fixed trench, so it's safe, but they can work as if it's loose soil and a dangerous work site. We have confined spaces where United Illuminating partnered with us to provide us some cabinets and confined spaces that they would then work in and we would have to lower into to rescue from. And we have a tower that was built in the early 80s, a burn building, a 2-story burn building that was added on to that.
Let's talk a little bit about that burn building.
Sure.
That burn building and I have sort of a close relationship.
Yes, you do.
As you know, that you all tricked me many years ago to coming to visit the fire training center, and I had the opportunity to put on the full gear and mask and tank, and you all, I think, probably were giggling as you lit the building on fire for me.
No, it's a non-combustible building. You can't light that building on fire.
But there was a big fire, and so talk about why that's important. For me, obviously, it was a terrorizing experience that I got through, and I'm very proud. And life-wise, it changed completely 100% my perspective and understanding and appreciation for what a firefighter does. So there's nothing like the hands-on experience to just give you that real-life tangible appreciation. But why does it need to be there, and to talk about that building for me a little bit, because
well, that's great, but in full disclosure, it was a treat, not a trick. You were invited to what we call Fire Ops 101, and it is a introductory program for civilians, often elected or appointed officials, media, news reporters, so that they can see what we do. And we do it all over the country. It's an IFF program that our fire school sponsors for locals throughout this area. And we ask folks like you and your peers, our first selectmen, the last few in fact, to come through and make forcible entry, slamming a sledge and a Halligan and an axe into a building to try and see how to get that door open. Right. Crawl into that fire, drag a hose line and put that fire out. Climb to the roof and cut a hole into the roof to ventilate the poisonous gases and the hot smoke. And extricate a patient from a vehicle and help to perform medical treatment on them. We do all that so that the civilians, in a course of half a day, get a sense of what we do every day. So when I described to you the Firefighter 1 training for a probie, someone that wants to come and become a firefighter, you all got 1 day of that. We have 4 probationary firefighters up at the academy that are getting 16 weeks of that. And so you get a good introduction, but we do that at a much higher order, throwing the ladders, different ways to throw the ladders, how to safely perform our job. It's a dangerous job, and we understand we're going to risk a lot to save a lot, but we also want to try and stay healthy for the next call and the next call, because they'll keep
So
coming.
when Fairfield residents are driving by, or if they live down at the beach and they see smoke billowing out of the fire tower, what's probably going on?
Oh, I can tell you what's going on is exactly that. It's training. It's either with a probationary fire crew. It may be refresher training. Company officers come down on duty with the trucks, and we'll send them in sometimes with artificial smoke up into the tower, sometimes with live fire, which we use pallets and hay. We don't use any diesel or any combustibles other than common, ordinary Class A combustibles. And we smoke it up. We'll steam the hay up a little bit so that it generates a lot more smoke. And we'll send them in to crawl and find a dummy, to do a rescue of a partner who's running out of air, to do a search of the room. We have cribs and beds and couches all set up so they can get in and do a fast search and do a secondary, more intense search. All of the different things that you need to do in a fire scene or an emergency scene, we have to train in. That's an OSHA requirement. We need to go through any tool that we might use, any procedure that we might have, and have practiced it within that year before we're going to perform it. So if it's a train accident on a Metro North line, a boat fire out in the middle of Long Island Sound, or someone's home fully engulfed, we need to have trained in how to respond to those things. Because it's not our emergency, it's an emergency we need to remediate.
Right. Now, on the other side of the training center lot, there is a building with a wood roof that you can climb up on through some obstacles and take a chainsaw and chain into the building from above. I did that. Did you know that?
I saw it. I have pictures to prove it.
Is that just going, firefighters are doing that to go through the process and just make sure they...
Well, for people who wouldn't understand, when they see a fire scene and firefighters are breaking out windows or cutting holes in the roof, it looks like it's destructive. What it's actually doing is the same thing that opening your flue, if you forgot to open it and the whole house is filling with smoke, what opening that flue provides, which is it removes that toxic smoke and the hot gases from the building so that probably less will burn, less will be damaged by smoke and by water, and we'll be able to salvage a lot more by creating a small 4 to 6 foot hole on the roof over that fire to act as a chimney. Or if we can't get a good position over that fire, because maybe there are attic floors in between, in a side window, in front windows. And the more effectively we can coordinate what the ventilation team is doing by opening that flue, and the fire attack team is doing by putting water on the fire, the more quickly we're going to be able to put that fire out and save your property as well as your
One of the things I was
lives.
Amazed about that day is the heat. Being that close to the heat, and you have to you wear incredibly special, those uniforms are special fabric or special materials to block the heat, but even then you can still feel the heat coming through.
It's not fireproof. We tell the little kids, do you have fireproof clothes? And some of them say, my PJs look like yours. I say, mine isn't fireproof, so yours definitely isn't. We've charred gear to see how far it can go before you're going to lose the gear and the person inside of it.
Now, I know that when you first go in and what people might see if they drive by the fire training center is some classrooms. I've been there. They're kind of run down.
Oh, you're being way too kind. We have anything from fire commission meetings there to the opportunity for public health to perform some of their ongoing training. Law enforcement comes down to use them for some of their SWAT training.
And the whole region. It's the whole region. Towns from
it's a
all
regional
over,
asset. And so, and I'll reach back now to sort of move to the next level, because it was recognized as long as a decade and a half ago, almost 2 now, that we needed better facilities. That these, as I said, 20-year lifespan buildings that were built in the 50s are long past their 3rd life. So in an initiative that started in actually late '99, when Bill Kessler, who's now the fire marshal, was Assistant Chief of Training down there, and through 5 other people before me, so there are plenty of giants whose shoulders I'm standing on, to put us here, going all the way back to Captain Elias. We have a plan that is already completed in New Haven's Regional Fire School and Hartford County's Regional Fire School, and is now going to be coming into Fairfield, followed by Beacon Falls, Cheshire, and Willimantic.
And we're getting basically brand new fire training facilities.
Oh, yeah.
And I have to say, I'm so impressed by your persistence, because I'm now going into my 8th year, believe it or not. And I remember when you called me just after I was elected to introduce yourself to me and to talk about these plans for this new fire training center. So here we are, jump forward 7 or 8 years, and we finally have the plans and the funding.
Yes, no, we do, and I'll explain it because it's a little complicated. Of course, I have to laugh because this is a 5-year plan that was initiated after a study that the Connecticut General Assembly funded back in 2001, which was completed in 2002. So when we met, it was probably supposed to have been completed for all 8 schools throughout the state. But that plan essentially required that a lot of site work be done, a lot of preparation. This was landfill site down at the entire area down there, plus the military complex that was down there. They needed to ensure that it was safely clean. And where we are right now is we have an architect that's drawn up some drawings for us of an example of a classroom and a 3-bay apparatus facility.
It's so much nicer, right?
It will be state-of-the-art, and it will be simple. I mean, we're not going to have smart boards, we're going to have whiteboards, and we're going to have projectors and screens, but we are going to be a very user-friendly facility. The largest classroom, twice as large as the one that we're in right now.
And I've been in that big one now.
Well, no, but that's how big the current one is. This will be twice that big. That's why we're excited.
Very nice.
Things like fire marshal recertification programs, and a lot of the larger programs that we're running. A work room that we can have tile down, so if folks are going out to work in the field, they're going to be able to be in gear and then go out and do that. Showers, air pack, refresher capability, maintenance, and again, bays to keep some of the equipment that's right now in loose canvas shelters that have been blown apart for several storms running. So we're very excited about having this almost $9 million facility, and essentially where it's at is the legislature has, you understand it, but I know some of the folks watching might not. The legislature has authorized the funding. So effectively they've said, we have this pot of money that's going to be available. We've authorized your credit card. Right. And what we're expecting at the end of this month, as the architects finalize their plan, as the bidder agencies get together and we choose one that is going to be the ultimate contractor that makes it happen. That then the governor will go in and allocate those funds, essentially say, run that card and there you go, there's the bond. Because the resources spent, as much as that sounds like when you compare it to some of the universities and school programs and any number of programs across the state, they fund career departments all along the shoreline for some of that training I was describing for you, including some of the OSHA mandated refresher training annually. And they fund some of the volunteer departments inland that we also serve, because we have, in this region alone, our Demas region has 14 communities and 28 fire departments. Wow. We also serve upstate, well into the upstate area. We've had folks come down from Manchester and points east, New London and Rhode Island, to take classes at our facility. So the investment in this over the coming 3 decades in lives saved, property protected, and firefighters and law enforcement and public health and other folks, civilians,
and you might be answering my question before I get a chance to ask it, but I'm sure people will be wondering, okay, so an investment in a fire training facility, how is that, how does that investment make my community safer, or my firefighters more ready to assist me if I'm in crisis?
That's a terrific question, and the answer is this. Right now I have a small square room that has a little alley on the side, a hallway on the side, that I can burn in. It's really small. It's really small. And then above it is an attic that can collect smoke. So you can't burn up there, but you can run firefighters up to do a search. The burn building that's going to go along with those classroom facilities I showed you is going to be an 18-room structure, similar but non-combustible to your home and another home. It'll get us up into bedrooms, living room areas, garages, in attic areas over the living spaces. Practicing in a non-combustible building, how to fight those fires, how to get people out alive, how to save firefighters from being trapped in a flashover or a backdraft. All of those things, the lives saved, it's kind of like that commercial, priceless. I can't put a price on one life saved, much less how many this regional school serves.
And Fairfield residents, and really residents throughout the region, but Fairfield residents can know that their firefighters are going to be even better trained, maybe even some of the best trained.
Well, I'd like to think so.
That means when you come to our houses in crisis, you're ready for a number of different
I believe
challenges.
that to be true. I'll be very straight with you. I've seen firefighters from the biggest cities through the smallest communities, and I find that Fairfields are up there with any one of them. I would put any team of Fairfield firefighters in any scenario that we have, not the high-rise Manhattan skyline fires, but anything that we normally have, I'd put our firefighters up against any other team and expect an excellent outcome. So the other piece that you're saying, and this came up actually when the Board of Finance was asking about this, we made an early presentation we had to remediate some soil that was down there. We do serve with other communities. Bridgeport has trucks in town. Whenever we have a large fire, they're covering our stations. They're responding to our other emergencies. Westport on that side of town. Easton. We were just in Easton the other day responding to them and doing mutual aid, as I described, going back to Ben Franklin. So the fact that this entire region is served by this facility serves every Fairfielder. But there's an additional benefit. For Westport to relocate trucks down here, or Bridgeport, or even points further distal, it's difficult. It means possibly hiring people back or knowing they need to jump and run for an emergency. It puts them at a pretty challenging place to be able to still maintain protection in their community. And train down here, Fairfielders, the Fairfield Fire Department and the other first responders that use the facility come down on a regular basis, on a daily basis. We have trucks down there and folks practicing on vehicle extrication. Sometimes the day after they had a tough call up on the highway and they want to see what would have happened if I tried this, what would have happened if I did that. Firefighting, gas, the tragedies in Stamford last Christmas with a structure fire, but then not long ago with a gas fire. Those kinds of emergency responses we need to practice in, because as one of my predecessors, Scott Bisson, liked to say and has on our logo, you fight the way you train. And if we are going to go in and fight a fire, we need to have trained to have done the right thing. And if we find something doesn't work in training, we can modify it. If we find something doesn't work out here, lives are at stake.
Yeah, and recently I had the opportunity to visit the Fire Training Center just a month or so ago, and they actually had set up their entire, I guess you would call it like the technology infrastructure that goes along with coordinating a response to a crisis. And that is all technology that's evolved really mostly since 2009-11, 2001. And I was just wondering, I mean, that's obviously not hands-on training in a smoke building, but it is hands-on training because coordinating the technology and the communications is so important. So what were they doing that day?
Well, I'll give you an example because you just mentioned the smoke building. We have a thermal imaging camera that can transmit an image out to those vans. So you could have a firefighter inside or at a hazmat projecting an image out to the command vans. And we've had them in action very recently in this community. The Metro North crash, the Bronson Road hazmat incident.
Oh, right.
We had multiple agencies in a unified command, local, state, federal agents, all operating together in those facilities so that, and that was what you were seeing practiced there.
Right.
We don't see what happened on 9/11, where law enforcement knew some information, fire knew other information, but they weren't able to communicate it. That's what those things exist for, so that we're interoperable, we're more effective, and I don't think there's a community better served by its interoperability with police and fire than this community, because we work so well. Chief Fellner, Chief McNamara have been cooperating and collaborating as their personnel have for a very, very long time.
Well, and I think a lot of residents in town, they just see that massive mobile command center, maybe they see it once a year during the parade, right? They don't really know that it's a piece of infrastructure that really goes into action.
Well, that's a terrific piece. I'll give you that example. When it was sitting in front of a residential area in Greenfield Hill, we were able to communicate to any agency. If we needed to bring in different units at different levels, state,
Right.
local, federal, we were going to be able to patch into any one of them, bring the officers into that command post, and we had a major in charge of the intelligence center up in Hartford sitting in our command post, just as if he was in a major incident at the clean energy explosion.
Right.
The exact same technology coming to bear, and again, training here so that everybody understands how to use it and what resources are there, so that when you need it at 3 o'clock in the morning, everybody is on the same page. You're not meeting each other for the very first time and learning how it's used at that emergency scene.
It's amazing. It's amazing what you all do. And I have one final question that's more going down the road of politics, because I have seen you over the past 7 or 8 years, and so much persistence on your part and so much dedication to following through and jumping through so many political hoops. And I'm wondering sort of the politics side, and I know you have to be careful, we all have to be careful, but the frustrations, the challenges, how you navigated them, because you always come back around and just push the project forward, and I so appreciated that.
Well, I thank you for that, and I recognize that we're all public servants, that your firefighters and your police officers and your public health workers and your elected officials have all chosen this course of public service. And I think no better example than Washington, D.C. not long ago, not to date this particular piece of film, but the fact that we just went through this enormous crisis and on the precipice, and we're past it. We're functioning.
Yeah.
It takes persistence, courage, and ultimately I think it's a classically American, not unique to America, but a classically American characteristics that we see a problem, we try and find a way to push through or work around, or simply, as you said, be tenacious. Because, and I think the example I used, if we pull up on a fire, I can't say we can't do this. I might have to say we need to halt it at the block of origin or the building of origin or the room of origin, but I can't say I give up, we're going home.
Right.
We have to finish the job, and we have to do everything we can to make lives and property and the environment better than it would be without us there. So that's how I took this task, and how I took every trip to Hartford or to local town hall or to the municipalities we represent.
Well, I have to admit, over the years, it's been fun having you come up to Hartford, and you'll be missed when the facility is built. You probably don't need to come up anymore and put pressure on the politicians, but I just can't thank you enough. I hope over the next year or so, the residents of Fairfield will be able to see this project being built, and now maybe have a little bit better idea what it is and why it's being built. And I'm absolutely excited to be at the grand opening or the ribbon cutting the day that you open your fire training center.
Well, I look forward to that very much, more than, or at least as much as you know, probably more than most people watching know. But I will also warn you, I joked that I just as soon run into a burning building as go into the legislative office building on occasion after a while. But I don't think I'm going to be done, because when our building is done, there are another 4 schools to complete.
Yikes! No.
So I can't just, we work together. We don't leave our brothers behind, and I can't leave that mission until all the buildings are completed. So I may not be as often or as tenaciously at your door, but I will be at your door.
I look forward to it.
I do too. I'd rather be at your door for something like that than at 3 in the morning with an emergency.
Yeah,
so.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for spending a few minutes with us today, learning about the Fairfield Fire Training Center, and hopefully, like I said, in the coming months and over the next year, you'll see that new facility built, and now you have a little better idea what's going on down there.